We're brought to you by Tito's Handmade Vodka. This is what John Lynch said. The most likely option is that Trey Lance remains with the team. Quote, we're very happy with Trey. The most likely option is that he's here. If we can find a landing spot for Trey that is a really good one for him and works for our organization, that's not something we turn a blind eye to, but that's not where our focus is right now. Our focus is getting Trey back here and us being the best football team. We're getting close to Pittsburgh. How do you interpret that?
Well, I am an old school football guy in terms of once you get paid a lot of money, the shitty stuff, it doesn't matter. You got to take it on the chin. We have seen historic figures, right? Eli Manning, say what you want about his entire career, won that franchise 2 Super Bowls and was benched during a streak, right? And just took it on the chin and
won. Not just benched anywhere, benched at the Raiders.
And Peyton Manning, the year that they won his last season, was essentially benched as well. And John Elway looked him in the eye before that season and was like, you're taking a pay cut. This is Peyton fucking Manning. Bill Belichick, in not so many words, told Tom Brady, we don't want to resign you. So this is what the money's for. And there is no way around it. This dude, and it's not all his fault, but the production's a production, has been paid almost $30 million for the production he's given the team, which is basically, historically, zilch. You know, if he is no longer on this team, I've heard enough people throw this stat out, it will be a historic amount of limit. No one will ever sniff this much playing time. A top 10 pick, a top 5 pick will, if he's traded, before the season starts, play that limited snap for a team. Now, it's pretty hard, right? At most positions, you're just going to end up playing some snaps. Even at quarterback, Zach Wilson is just in a different universe. Brock Purdy's in a different universe through one season. So, I give him a day.
Playing a lot of snaps get you out faster, right? Like Josh Rosen starts a whole season. They're like, cannot do this.
For sure. So I have no problem sometimes, whether it's Peyton Manning or Trey Lance, you get terrible news about your career, especially in right now, right? You're talking August 23rd, not Eagle week or Cowboy week. Just take a day, whatever. Practice. You were there yesterday. They didn't even miss him. He's a third-string quarterback. But 24 hours passes, you're still on the payroll, right? This is big boy business. It's time to come back, and we're ultimately on the hook, if you play Friday, because it sounded crazy when Kyle first said that, right, the day of. Now it's we're paying for it. We might not be able to trade him anyway, so if he were to shatter his leg again, we're on the hook regardless, right? We're paying him whether he's the Q3, Q2, or Q7, and I think it's pretty clear we all come to the agreement if he's not a malcontent, they're not going to cut him. It doesn't make any sense cost-wise. So it's this is the pros, whether you're 22 or whether you're a 38-year-old whoever, right? Peyton Manning, Eli Manning, you got to be a pro. And it's easier said than done. We've all, I don't care what industry you're in, how much you're making, you get some tough news sometimes. You might need a day. But when you're at premium price points, you got to fucking suck it up.
Yeah, I mean, I interpret what he's saying as if we can find a landing spot for Trey that's really good for him and works for us, it's not something we turn a blind eye to. So absolutely, we're taking calls. They know that they are not going to cut him. And I would imagine if you're a team out there that kind of wants Trey Lance, you want to see, are they really going to hold on to him? I know it costs them money to cut him, but maybe Trey can make enough of a stink that they're willing to pay that money to make this problem go away. You're right. I mean, it felt like yesterday at this time, he's going to be gone ASAP. Now that it's gone another day, they've proven to be very patient. They were extremely patient with Debo. Different situation, obviously, but extremely patient with Debo. I know, different situation. I'm just saying, if you're one of these other teams, you really don't have a lot of urgency to do this before Tuesday, in theory, unless you feel like there's multiple bidders, which at this point, it'd be pretty surprising if there were multiple bidders.
I was trying to look up the date of. I think
roster cut down is Tuesday.
No, I think the better example is the way they played last year with Jimmy Garoppolo, right? Yeah. They played that till next week. Just hearing you talk, their patience. Maybe Tuesday's not the day, and maybe it's more the fluidity of all of next week, right? Because Jimmy Garoppolo was re-signed during that week. I Google didn't pull up the exact day, but maybe he could easily be traded next Friday. Right? Once a team sets their roster, maybe makes some claims, realizes let's just take a flyer on them. But again, this is a tiny contingent, but the people that truly think he's getting screwed, that he should want to go somewhere else, I think best case scenario, he wouldn't see the field for said team till early mid-October, right? You get to go, as we saw last year with Baker Mayfield, 1-5, 1-4, 2-6. Like it takes a little while. Look up 2-6 where 8 week 7-8 lands you. I mean, you're talking close to Halloween. So this is not
and would need to learn an offense unless he knows the offense of the team he's going to.
Yeah, this is not trade for Sam Bradford, immediately make him the starter years ago, regardless of what you think about Sam. Like, it's not some plug-and-play trade for a quarterback.
Even trade for Garoppolo, and he takes a week or two, and then he starts for you.
For sure. And no one is trading for this guy to be their starter, right? So you're trading for this guy as ultimately get him for a couple years, work him out, get him under there. The other thing is, think how difficult it would be. We always talk about this. Like, part of the reason when they traded for Jimmy, who came from like Harvard Business School in New England, but then he comes to San Francisco, which is like Stanford Business School. Like, they're kind of a different operation. So it's like it wouldn't be fair to play him right away. And even by the time he played, whatever, couple weeks into it, it was like, yeah, we just fudged the playbook for him. They did it last year with McCaffrey, another Stanford guy, genius. Like, yeah, he was just kind of telling him the plays on the fly. So this guy, if you are in the camp, which I think it's a tiny, tiny vocal minority of this guy's getting fucked, he should go somewhere else. If he does go somewhere else, he's not sniffing the game Sundays for a while. And there is a chance, depending on where he would go, like, okay, Atlanta, get him. Well, what if they're just solid? And all of a sudden you look up and they're 4-4. They're not like making a change at quarterback. Like, there is a chance if he's traded even to a questionable, shitty situation on trade the day he's traded, he doesn't play at all. For him, maybe till December. Like, there's no lock that we know for sure he's not playing right away.
Right.
So this notion that there's some plug-and-play great situation. So when Kyle and John talk about this, I do agree they're kind of right. Like, we're not holding them back from 3 starting situations.
Yeah,
and
go find the place you want to go. But also, he's also saying it's not going to be Seattle. It's not going to be the Rams. We're not sending you to Philly. I think
but he would not play in Seattle or Philly.
No, he may not, but I don't think John wants to send. They know they got to attach a pick. I think they don't want to do that. That's part of what he's saying. Is you're not a free agent. If you find something that works for us, okay, we'll listen. But you ultimately have to show up, or you start getting fined.
But let's use the Philly example. Let's say they did the attached pick and they traded him to Philly. Even if Jalen got banged up again, they are identical to the Niners. Every game matters. Every snap matters. This is in 13, 14 wins. We need to have a better record than the Cowboys and the Giants, that we could easily not win the division, and then we're a wild card, no home games. It's the exact same situation. So it's like, hey, we ain't fucking with a raw product. Say what you want about Mariota, who has looked terrible. At least they might go, listen, he's a little Sam Darnold-y. They're not going to raw products. I'd even argue Seattle. Pete's kind of in, like, we're trying to fucking win now mode. That's why they re-signed Geno Smith. Hell, that's why they kept Drew Lock around.
I saw Drew Lock made a sweet throw. Did you see that throw he made the other day? Good throw. I have no idea.
How would Trey Lance, even if you think Drew Lock sucks, he's now been there for a couple years, knows the offense. Like, how would Trey Lance ever get up to speed?
Yeah, it would have to be similar to this, but the reverse, where they've had Drew Lock for a couple years and have decided, nah, he ain't it. Right? It would have to be that. Like, did you see DTR, man? What a preseason. Depth chart's out. He's 3rd. Joshua Dobbs is the backup quarterback.
Well, guy, a lot of this is fans overrating preseason action. As you texted me last night, because some of the PFF guys were throwing out how they were in the same recruiting class, DTR and Trey Lance. And obviously, as DTR played since he was a true freshman for Chip.
Yeah, he took – you remember who got hurt? Former 49er quarterback?
I forget his name. But
Wilton Spate.
So he's
a 5-year college starter.
Yeah, and as you made the point, like, of course he looks good in the second half of some of these preseason games.
Same reason Aiden O'Connell looks good.
But I will say this for DTR, and I've really kind of paid attention the last couple of years. He clearly improved a lot when say from like junior year till now. And like, Trey couldn't beat him out. He could not. He couldn't beat out Sam Darnold. Like, we just saw it. It didn't happen. And as Kyle said, it hasn't really been close for a while now. We've just delayed the announcement. But
do you want me? Are you asking for the GFF numbers? Is that
yeah,
no? I already made that video. John, I just looked. The Niners have made 10 first-round draft choices in the last 9 years. Today's Thursday. They aren't practicing. We'll see if Trey doesn't show up Friday. 3 of those players were at practice yesterday. 2 of those players were holding out or held out, and 5 of those players are not on the team anymore.
One thing, if
Trey and Nick Bosa, quote unquote, holdouts.
I do think even if he knew it 10 days ago, it wouldn't have made sense from a logistical standpoint for the hoopla around the team, his coordinators, his players having to talk. The timing isn't that crazy, right? Because if you knew potentially the day it was announced he might go away, because you couldn't have 3 straight days with him not being around. It would have just you can't.
I don't think he was going to announce it yesterday. I think Trey forced their hand.
You think that Trey was told and then Trey's camp leaked it?
Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't quite line up, but why would he announce it on Wednesday? Why?
Because you have a 4 or 5 day window when people are really going through their roster with a fine-tooth comb. They've evaluated all the quarterbacks who are fringe that might get I've done this job, and you're constantly meeting about the group you need. Obviously, quarterback's always a hot button topic. This new quarterback rule, which I think you explained really well before even the memo went out. So you would have to keep the guy if you want to make even the emergency quarterback on your 53-man roster. You can't have a practice squad guy as an emergency roster.
So you're saying you announce it to tell people like, hey, call us for a trade.
Not just call us for a trade, but just kind of know where they are in their timeline of the roster. Like it's getting really serious right now with all positions, but that position specifically of like you start talking through it, you start realizing who I'm going to cut to make a little money space. You wouldn't do this next Tuesday because you want to give leeway to everyone, and who knows? And part of it is like could be. We talk a lot about starters get injured. What if like your second string guy breaks his foot or breaks a hand or something this weekend, right?
How about conspiracy theory?
What if Sam gets hurt? You keep him around.
I mean, that's basically what happened with Jimmy last year. Conspiracy theory for you. When you know somebody for a long time, sometimes you know how they're going to react. And maybe they had reached the conclusion. Now, I don't think it makes any sense to cut them because of the finances, but maybe they had reached the conclusion we are willing to cut it. We can do that. We found a way to do it financially. It makes sense for us to have Brandon Allen. But they didn't want to just do it suddenly and take 100% of the blame. So they announce it kind of knowing this might be the reaction. And then we kind of look like, we weren't going to hold him hostage. He decided to stop showing up. We had to cut him. What do you want from us? What about that theory?
I think that of the pie chart, that would be part of their thinking pie chart, right? If he does make a stink, if his agent makes a stink. I do think it can be difficult for him to make a stink, right? I really do. I don't think a lot of people.
What do you mean?
Him storming out, I refuse, I'm getting fucked. I don't think he's getting the benefit of the doubt on that from like the public opinion, right? He's been paid a ton. He hasn't won any job. It's just like Jonathan Taylor. You go, well, he a couple years ago at 1,900 yards is proven to be an all-pro level guy. You can see both sides of it. Like this is kind of one-sided. Like the coach doesn't think you're good enough. You kind of last year they were freaking out you weren't good enough. They had to they got lucky that Jimmy was still available. And I don't care who you are. Like clearly Purdy's a lot better right now. Like so the guy that they just drafted, I always forget his pick, 255, 254, whatever the pick was. They'll literally. We have a name for his pick, and it's called Mr. Irrelevant. Is a year in is dramatically better than you.
Yeah,
like it's not even a question. And there's not. This is where I keep going back to what makes the Niners unique. A lot like the Eagles, right? If someone on the Eagles, a Fletcher Cox, a Brandon Graham, a Jason Kelsey, ever come out and either support or question, it holds a lot of weight because they have a lot of value. It's why when the Patriots had the issue with Malcolm Butler when he got benched in the Super Bowl. and the McCourtys and the Bradys are all pissed off. You're like, Bill might have fucked up on this one, right? These guys are winning players. They know what it looks like, and they're going to give you the benefit of the doubt. But if you cross the line and you screw them, they're going to question it. None of the core guys have any issue with this. Not a fucking peep. So I've said this from the beginning. I trust those guys. Those guys have proven to be not just war daddies, but know what it looks like, know what they need. And they always respected Jimmy because they just knew they could go to battle with him despite his flaws. And I think they immediately questioned. The stories were coming out left and right last year. They didn't question the guy. They have no problem with the individual. This is a bottom line business. They question, like, is this guy good enough?
Right.
Is this guy good enough?
And then Purdy shows up and does all that war daddy stuff in games, right? So it's not even a question anymore.
They were banging the table like in practices, remember? Like Fred Warner impromptu would be like, this guy Purdy, man, I'm impressed.
Yeah.
He's not just throwing that out to be nice to the guy. He's trying to win a Super Bowl. Fred Warner right now, like, he's trying to become a Hall of Fame player. Like, think about like what's on the line for some of these guys. I mean, we're talking like George Kittle wants to be a Hall of Famer, wants to be a Super Bowl champion. Like, these guys are in a unique spot. Honestly, only a couple.
Brandon Ayuk's trying to get paid. Brandon Ayuk's trying to get generational wealth. Trent Williams is hanging on at the end of his career for like one more big run.
Let's use him as an example. Last year, because he was like holding out, mad,
Kyle Juszczyk's telling Jack Coletto, stay over there, man.
People thought that Debo wasn't a big Trey fan, and I think it kind of played out that well, wanted Jimmy back. It did feel like Brandon Ayuk was his buddy. Like, they got close last year during the offseason, during training camp. What happened to that relationship?
It's probably fine, right? But fine doesn't mean it's good enough.
I don't mean go
to the mat. We're playing football.
I don't mean as a human. I mean as the teammate. Like, right. I don't see the guy. My
job as your friend is not to say you're the better quarterback if you're not, right?
Because he doesn't believe it. Well, he no longer needs to even attempt to put that message out there.
All his teammates will be like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, I just get back to this. It was, I do think their emotions after, people forget because it feels like 50 years ago, but fall of 2020, they literally got kicked out of California. They could not operate because of the rules in Santa Clara County during a disastrous season for them. Like, their emotions, they could not have been in a good spot. Like, normally thinking, where you just get some clarity. You coming over here to Arizona, you get booted. The season's a disaster. Remember those last couple games when they were playing at Arizona Stadium with everyone in that box? They were just in a bad headspace. And clearly, a team that does not operate out of desperation, it feels like that was their true desperation move. Because most other moves, even McCaffrey, you go, actually it made a lot of sense. Like, we got to, add a 4th-round pick to make sure we love the guy and he doesn't go to the Rams? Easy one. Buckner is like, is Buckner really worth the 14th overall pick? Now, they picked the wrong guy, but it was anyone with a brain was like, yeah, it makes sense. This one felt like this feels a little haphazard. Like, what are you guys doing? And think about it. They were thrown off. It was just a crazy year. Again, they got fucking displaced. And that was only like a month removed, right? The season ends early January. They make the trade a month and a half later. The Deshaun Watson thing it was a weird time for them.
Yeah, I mean, they entered the season thinking they're a Super Bowl contender, right?
Well, they've just been there.
And then they're not. They're a 6-win team. So they think like, oh my God. Not only, like, to me, it's one thing when you almost win the Super Bowl. It's easy to just keep maxing out the payroll. But then you go, we just went from 13-3 to 6-10. This is actually going to cost us more money to get where we want to go. We need a cheaper quarterback. Like, we cannot open this window back up with a $40 million quarterback. We can't do it. I wonder if that's part of it too, right? Like, I think there's a lot of factors that probably factored into them operating very poorly. And that is the lesson, hopefully, for them. But
I just don't think in the draft you ever force a quarterback when you don't get to control the picks. And they did a situation where they didn't control picks, even if they go, we knew the pod of guys. Right. That's crazy. I mean, that's just...
Well, they all might have not been worth it.
Well, they've never operated like that. No good teams operate like that. The only other comparison ironically, was the Jets with Sam Darnold when they went from 6-3, right? That's not good business. You just don't do that. One thing on draft night, right, to trade up from pick 15 to 6 or whatever when you know the player. It's another thing to do that. And listen, they get away with it because they won 13 games and they won the division. And they've won games. You can make mistakes. I heard Coward this morning. Like, why does it matter if Brock Purdy turns out to be good? Like, Trey Lance is not not some outlier. He's actually the norm. Most guys turn out to not be that good. The other thing that kind of bothers me, it's honestly kind of pissing me off when people are saying that they mismanaged him. Sometimes, like, I don't care what you do. Like, sometimes guys just aren't good, right? You can put them through the development process. You can put them around good players. You can put them around good training regimens. You can put them in a great offense, and it just doesn't work. Like, there's a level of which you always can help a guy improve, right? But there's also some that, whether it's injury or whether it's just limitations of your ability, like not everyone is just like, anyone could be Steve Young at quarterback who has the talent. Like, that's just not that's bullshit.
Right.
It's just not a fact. Right. And then there are some guys who clearly, probably a better situation, he would have turned out a better player, 100%. But to think that's 100% of all players that quote unquote bust out or underachieve or limit. I'm not even talking like Jamarcus Russell or even Ryan Leaf. I'm talking about a guy that just 6'7", like if Josh Rosen had gone to Andy Reid, there's a chance he just would have sucked no matter what. And I would bet on that, right? Can't move. Clearly his arm's not as great
John,
when you see it live.
Like, I was saying this to somebody today. We were talking about Darnold and Darnold's 55 games. Trey hasn't played. Give me the guy who hasn't proven that he's not any good. But Kyle Shanahan's experience is the reverse of that. He's had a few months with Sam Darnold and 2 years with Trey Lance. For the rest of us who just watch the games, we've seen a bunch of Sam Darnold games and hardly any Trey Lance games. But Kyle has seen a bunch, 2 years of Trey Lance practices. Now he's been hurt and missed time too, so it's not a full 2 years, and no Sam Darnold time. So, like, there are a few guys, I guess, that are just straight up gamers. Patrick Mahomes, he's a gamer. Well, kind of. He's also good in practice, right? Like, gamer, like, part of the premise has to be then, yeah, what Trey Lance was in a practice that Kyle wasn't impressed in, not who he is in a game.
To me, it'd be like a Cam Newton who's just not an accurate player and is not like running over guys in practice, right? Like what he did a lot of the times was not a practice skill.
You want to know something? I'll give you one GFF thing actually. The game stats and the practice stats, Lance was identical. He had the same percentage of plus throws and negative throws in practice. And then he had the same percentage of plus throws and negative throws in the game. In other words, every great play he made a bad play. And it was that way in the game, and it was that way in practice. Is it about Kyle not knowing what Trey is, just liking Sam more? I think he thinks he has a pretty good idea. Now, it's a bunch of what ifs. You don't always get to find out. And maybe Trey will go somewhere else. He's young, and we'll get to find out. Oh, they did mismanage him, and then he overcame it. Like Alex Smith, right, who overcame it. But odds are just stacked against every quarterback that plays that they're actually the franchise quarterback.
The other thing is Alex is a good example of a guy that had two guys that both defensive guys and clearly not NFL caliber head coaches, clearly, Singletary and Nolan. And then he got two real coaches in Harbaugh and in Andy, and he was clearly capable immediately. Even early on with Harbaugh, his stats sucked or whatever, but he was a capable player. Like, no one can argue, like, got to question this Shanahan guy. Like, no football person does.
Well, you can question his ability as a drafter, as a valuer of draft picks, but you can't question that quarterbacks play their best football when they play for him.
I also think a knock is like he keeps fucking up the quarterback. Couldn't you play the opposite? Like, he probably got the most Jimmy will ever get out of himself. Mm-hmm. He's going to compete immediately with Mr. Irrelevant. He got Matt Ryan to become an MVP. He got Kirk Cousins. Now, you can say
it does
his limitations through his eyes, what he looks for, but maybe he knows to run this offense. He needs that a little more. I'm not trying to be like Mike Shanahan 2.0, but
I think it's fair to say, like, at every chance when he's had chances to, like, step into the spot where maybe he could get the guys that have turned out to be superstar franchise quarterbacks, right?
I'm not saying in the draft him passing on Mahomes. I'm talking about people crush him for like what he's done with Jimmy and Purdy. Like, to me, that's pretty impressive.
I think when people say that, they're just saying like, bro, would you just find a guy who can be your quarterback? And he would say like, I did, Jimmy, and he kept getting hurt. Jimmy would just be his quarterback if he stopped getting hurt. Really?
Yeah. How many teams? Yeah, I mean, I think that he's proven that if you just get capable quarterback play, the team's going to be good, and that's really all you can ask for as an NFL fan, right?
Somebody said to me, you know, if Trey goes off to play well, if Sam looks bad, this is going to be terrible. And I said, you know, the most likely outcome really is that Sam, if he plays, isn't great, and Trey, if he plays somewhere, isn't great, and all of this was a waste of time.
Yeah,
that's the most likely outcome.
I would be stunned if Sam, great strong, but isn't capable.
I would be too. I know. I'm intrigued. I'm with you. All right. That's that.